Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about another horrible case with you. Just after 3 p.m. on Friday, September 2nd, 2016, 13-year-olds Lauren Landavazo and her friend Makayla Smith were taking their usual route home from school. As they walked through an alleyway in Wichita Falls, Texas, an unfamiliar vehicle abruptly stopped in front of them. A young man stepped out, eyeing them intently. The girls, thinking he was simply pulling a prank, ignored him and continued walking. Within moments, one of the middle schoolers would be fatally wounded on the ground, while the other fought desperately to survive. Investigators would later uncover that, after giving Lauren and Makayla a prolonged stare, the driver had retrieved a rifle from his SUV and began firing. He discharged a total of 16 rounds, with 15 striking Lauren. Makayla, hit by the first bullet in the chest, somehow managed to summon the strength to run to safety. After emptying his weapon, the shooter fled the scene, leaving dozens of horrified witnesses, many of whom were fellow students heading home from McNeil Middle School, stunned by the violence they had just witnessed. As ambulances raced to the site, news of the shooting spread quickly. A call from a friend notified Bianca Landavazo that students had been shot nearby, prompting her to rush to the scene. Upon arrival, she saw paramedics fighting to save her only daughter. Witnesses later recalled that they would forever be haunted by the sound of Bianca's anguished screams. Lauren's father, Vern, who had left work as soon as he learned of the shooting, arrived shortly after. Struggling to comprehend the reality, he convinced himself that his daughter would pull through. Bianca, having seen the severity of her injuries, feared otherwise. At the hospital, the Landavazos were informed that their daughter, who had just entered 8th grade, had died from her wounds. The medical examiner would later conclude that Lauren had been struck by 15 bullets from a .22 caliber rifle. 2 of the shots had hit her head, either of which would have been fatal. Her death was ruled a homicide. Makayla was rushed to the hospital where she was admitted in serious condition. Despite her injuries, when detectives interviewed her, she provided a surprisingly detailed description of the shooter. She described the perpetrator as a young white male with chestnut-colored hair that fell loosely around his face. Although she had only seen him for a short time, she vividly recalled some distinct features. He had a prominent nose and a scattering of acne across his cheeks, details that would prove essential in identifying him. It didn't take long for other witnesses to step forward, eager to help with any information they could provide. Multiple people reported seeing the suspect drive away from the scene in a gold SUV, speeding off just as the dust settled, and before anyone could get a closer look. The combination of these witness statements and Makayla's detailed description of the shooter allowed police to create a composite sketch, which they quickly released to the public through local news outlets. This sketch would soon play a critical role in the investigation. In less than 48 hours, authorities received a promising lead. A concerned citizen called in with information about her neighbor, 20-year-old Cody Lott, whom she'd seen carrying what looked like a rifle case into his apartment on the day of the murder. The fact that Lott lived only a short distance from the alley where the shooting had occurred raised immediate red flags for investigators, who agreed that he warranted closer scrutiny. As investigators were looking into this tip, another call came in. A couple reported seeing a young man sitting in a gold SUV near a makeshift memorial that had been set up at the location of the shooting. Given that this sighting had happened just moments before, officers sprang into action, hoping they could catch the suspect before he left the area. As they approached the vicinity, patrol officers spotted a gold SUV heading in the opposite direction. They quickly signaled for the driver to pull over, and the young man behind the wheel complied without hesitation. Identifying himself as Cody Lott, he seemed unbothered by their request, and exuding confidence, granted them permission to search his vehicle. He seemed unfazed, likely due to the fact that he had recently cleaned the car's interior from top to bottom, perhaps believing that any incriminating evidence would have been removed. Although the initial search didn't uncover anything directly linked to the shooting, officers did find a pair of brass knuckles hidden inside the vehicle. Since these were illegal to possess in Texas at the time, they seized the opportunity to arrest Lott on a charge of possessing a dangerous weapon, a charge that carried a hefty fine and the potential for jail time. Once in custody, authorities brought Lott into an interrogation room, where they began questioning him about the double shooting. Initially, he lied outright, feigning complete ignorance of the incident. However, after about an hour, he grew comfortable in the detective's presence and began recounting a disturbing tale that grabbed everyone's full attention. With animated gestures and overflowing nervous energy, Lott detailed how he had developed an obsession with Lauren after watching her walk by the apartment he shared with his mother and stepfather. Entranced by her appearance, especially her piercing blue-green eyes, he began waiting by the window every day to catch a glimpse of her after school. Over time, he convinced himself that the beautiful brunette was his, fully and unquestionably. Lott's unreturned affection turned to rage one day when he saw Lauren holding hands with a boy her age. Enraged by what he saw as a betrayal, he resolved then and there to make her regret crossing his path, despite the fact that he had never even spoken to her. Although he had been in relationships before, none had lasted very long. Later, he admitted to a court-appointed psychiatrist that he held a hatred in his heart toward women. Emotionally immature and irrationally demanding, Lott had driven away each of his girlfriends, one after the other. Envious of others in happy relationships, he withdrew into a fantasy where Lauren, who seemed perfect to him, was devoted only to him. Seeing her with someone else shattered that fantasy, and for that, he believed she had to pay. Determined to exact revenge, Lott had taken one of his stepfather's rifles from their gun cabinet on the day of the shooting, preparing for what was to come. When Lauren and Makayla appeared, he grabbed the weapon and jumped into his SUV. He pulled up in front of them, blocking their path, and opened fire. The first shot struck Makayla, sending her to the ground, but he saved the rest of the bullets for Lauren, who had been his intended target all along. Lott later expressed regret only for running out of ammunition. Otherwise, he would have made sure Makayla, who could identify him, hadn't survived. Then, as if dismissing his jealous rage as insignificant, Lott bizarrely portrayed himself as a hero who had acted selflessly to protect Lauren from potential future harm. In his twisted perspective, by ending her life young, he believed he was sparing her from the evils of the world, including the dangers of rapists and other predators. In his mind, taking her life had saved her from future suffering. After detectives brought him back to reality, Lott continued, admitting that he had fled the scene when a crowd began gathering. Panicked, he abandoned the rifle in a nearby field. Later that evening, once he felt it was safe, he retrieved the gun and returned it to its original place. Since he had no known connection to the victims, he assumed he would remain under the radar, dismissing the fact that he had brazenly opened fire on the defenseless girls in broad daylight with dozens of witnesses nearby. Trying to get to the bottom of his twisted motivations, detectives pressed Lott to explain why he would murder someone who didn't even know he existed. Riding high on the attention he was receiving, Lott eagerly shared his reasoning. He said he had desperately wanted a girlfriend and had convinced himself that Lauren would be the one for him. When he discovered she was already in a relationship, his desire turned to resentment. In his mind, if he couldn't have her, then no one else would either. Growing more engrossed in his own storytelling, Lott added a bizarre layer to his explanation by claiming he had an accomplice who had egged him on. According to Lott, his partner in crime, the one he claimed had influenced him in the days leading up to the murder, was none other than the devil himself. It was, he explained, the devil who had whispered words of encouragement, fueling his determination to carry out the killing. Lott further elaborated that he had consulted with Mr. Scratch, a nickname often associated with Satan, before following through with his deadly plan. When this so-called king of the underworld supposedly endorsed his decision, any lingering doubts vanished. With such an influential ally supporting him, Lott claimed that going through with the murder, an act he referred to as an assassination, felt effortless, even natural. After hearing enough of his chilling confession, authorities formally charged Lott with 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Though he had confessed in detail, he pleaded not guilty to both charges. However, he was held in custody on a $4 million bail as he awaited trial. Further investigation into Lott's electronic devices revealed disturbing evidence. His cell phone contained multiple images of underage girls engaging in explicit acts. This led to additional charges of possession of child pornography, adding yet another offense to the list he would face in court. When detectives reached out to one of Lot's former girlfriends, they were presented with even more disturbing insights into his behavior. She recounted that he had been a volatile and violent partner, once attempting to strangle her with a seatbelt during a fit of anger. After their breakup, she claimed Lot had kidnapped and tortured both her and her young son, an incident she had been too afraid to report out of fear of retribution. Only after learning of his arrest did she feel safe enough to come forward with her story. True to his narcissistic nature, Lot had closely monitored media coverage of the case, paying particular attention to how his actions were being portrayed. When he found that the news outlets were labeling the shooting as a random act of violence, he was enraged. He felt robbed of the recognition he believed he deserved for the time and planning he had put into killing Lauren. In a stunning display of delusion, he continued to insist on his innocence while simultaneously demanding credit for the supposed effort he had invested in her murder. Those who knew Lot described him as a spoiled individual who had been indulged since childhood. He saw the world as something that should bend to his every whim, and he acted like a tyrant, quick to anger and unwilling to compromise. Despite taking from others without giving back, he expected people to comply with his demands, viewing himself as the center of everything. Widely seen as a social outcast and a user of recreational drugs, Lot was often regarded as eccentric, to put it mildly. Though he could behave within social norms when he needed to, he frequently teetered on the edge of acceptable behavior, straying into dangerous territory when it suited him. For as long as anyone could remember, he had walked the fine line between oddity and outright instability, creating a volatile presence in the lives of those around him. Originally scheduled for trial in March 2018, Lot's court date was postponed after his defense successfully argued that he was mentally unfit and could not fully comprehend the legal process. After 6 months of intensive treatment in a psychiatric facility, however, he was ruled competent to proceed. Presenting their case to the jury, District Attorney Maureen Shelton and Chief Prosecutor Ron Poole argued that Lot had meticulously stalked his young victim for almost a year before taking her life. They emphasized that had he not exhausted his ammunition, Makayla, too, would likely have died on the pavement that day. In contrast, Lot's defense team maintained that he was plagued by mental illnesses that made him incapable of discerning right from wrong. They contended that even if he had been the shooter, he had acted under the influence of uncontrollable impulses rather than as a premeditated killer. Instead, they portrayed him as a person overwhelmed by invasive thoughts that pushed him to act. On September 19, 2018, the jury deliberated for just 40 minutes before convicting Cody Lot on all charges. At sentencing, he received life in prison plus an additional 20 years. Under Texas law, he will become eligible for parole in 2048, at which point he will be 52 years old if no unforeseen circumstances arise. Throughout the trial, as well as before and after, Lot displayed nothing but arrogance, showing no remorse for his cold-blooded killing of an 8th grader and for the enduring trauma he inflicted on her friend, both physically and emotionally. Makayla, who faced down a killer and survived, bears a lasting reminder of that horrific day. Since removing the bullet from her chest would pose significant risks, doctors have left it where it is. Although they hope the bullet may eventually shift to a safer area for extraction, there is no assurance that this will happen. As a tribute to Lauren, and to honor Makayla's ongoing resilience, a statue of a majestic black horse was placed on the grounds of McNeil Middle School. Decorated with words like love and live, the monument was adorned with purple and blue paw prints, the girl's favorite colors. To those who cherished Lauren and suffered her unimaginable loss, the statue symbolized the perfect memorial for a girl known for her kindness to both animals and people. Lauren was famously compassionate, welcoming everyone she met at school. She had a reputation for going out of her way to make new students feel at ease. Her loved ones knew that, had she met Lot under different circumstances, she would have extended him the same undeserved courtesy. While she would not have been interested in a romantic connection with an older man, she would have willingly offered him friendship. Heartbreakingly, her killer's delusional thoughts made it clear that no words or actions from Lauren could have altered his intentions. On October 1st, 2020, vandals, proving that some people lack any respect, stole the statue after forcefully dislodging it from its base. Following a widespread search, the Forever horse was found shattered in a barn in nearby Clay County. With the help of a police tip line, 2 local teens, 19-year-old Zachary Kaiser and his friend Tyler Darland, were arrested a couple of months later, charged with theft and property destruction. Their accomplices, Dakota James and Braden Seward, were also taken into custody shortly afterward. Kaiser was ultimately convicted and ordered to pay $400 in restitution for the destruction of the statue. As part of his punishment, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, in a surprising turn of events, the judge chose to suspend his sentence at the request of Lauren's parents. They believed that Kaiser might have a better chance of rehabilitation and redemption if given the opportunity to live outside of the prison system. Though this decision was an act of compassion meant to offer him a second chance, the gesture would soon prove to be in vain. Kaiser's optimism did not align with his actions. Just 4 months after his release, he found himself in legal trouble once again. His inability to follow the rules of society was clear, and the court, recognizing that he had squandered his opportunity for reform, decided to revoke the suspension. Kaiser was ordered to serve out the remainder of his original sentence behind bars. Meanwhile, the families of the victims, with the support of their friends and the local community, worked together to commission a new statue to replace the one that had been stolen and destroyed. Their determination and resilience paid off on May 27, 2021, when a second memorial was unveiled in front of McNeil Middle School. This new statue, though perhaps not without its challenges, symbolized the hope that it would stand strong and remain in place, a lasting tribute to Lauren forever. On June 11, 2019, Texas enacted Lauren's Law, which classifies the intentional murder of a child under the age of 15 as a capital offense. Prior to Lauren's tragic death, the age threshold was set at 10, which meant that her killer was not eligible for the death penalty. Lauren's parents, who worked relentlessly to see the law passed, hope that the more stringent regulations will serve as a deterrent to individuals like Lot, preventing them from targeting the most vulnerable members of society. While the law does not apply retroactively and thus does not affect their daughter's case, the Landavazos find solace in knowing that their efforts may provide a sense of closure to the families of future victims. Thanks guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a comment and subscribe. There are many shocking cases ahead of you. Until then, stay safe.